Hey there, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I will tell you 3 haunting stories of people who were never seen again. First, we dive into the chilling mystery of Camera 23, where a missing camera leads to terrifying footage and unearthly discoveries. Next, we uncover the bizarre case of Alan's suicide, a small-town tragedy erased from existence, leaving one man questioning his reality. Finally, we explore the eerie tale of a man in Moscow, waiting for a train to the USSR that doesn't exist, well until it does. These spine-chilling tales will keep you on the edge of your seat. If you enjoy creepy stories that defy explanation, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel for more thrilling content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a spooky upload.
Story 1. Camera 23. By Unknown.
I've been teaching film studies at the local college for about 6 months now, since I got my degree. As well as teaching classes, a part of my job is to lease out cameras to the students and keep track of which cameras are available and which are leased out. This particular story is a few weeks old, but now I feel it's safe to talk about that fateful night. Since the theory part of the course is to be taken in May, we encourage our students to finish their practical work by mid-February. From Christmas onward, cameras were being booked in all directions. On the 3rd week of January, every camera had been lent out for the weekend. Well, not every camera. You see, we had 20 Kodak cameras, which we numbered between 1 and 20. All of those had been taken out, but we'd bought 4 new cameras of the same type, which had come on the Wednesday and had not been leased out. We gave these the numbers 21, 22, 23, and 24. They were all on my desk when I locked up my office on Friday night. Upon returning to work the following Monday, all was as it should be, except for one thing. Camera 23 had inexplicably gone missing. I knew no one else had entered my office over the weekend. Everything was as I left it except for the missing camera, and having bought the new cameras out of my own budget, I was the only person who knew about them. I was going to present them to the staff meeting that morning, but all I could do was explain the apparent theft of Camera 23. We all expected someone to come clean eventually. After all, our only suspects were film students, not international jewel thieves. After a stern word with each of my classes about the importance of returning equipment, all 20 cameras were back in my office by the end of the day. The following weekend, all 23 cameras still in my possession, including the other 3 new ones, were borrowed and returned on the Monday. Camera 23 had now been gone for a week, so we agreed as a department that we were well within our rights to check CCTV footage from the weekend the camera went missing. I stated my intentions. I'd be the one checking through the footage, to all my classes that day. I gave all my students a final ultimatum and, as had been ritual for the past week, every single student denied the theft of Camera 23. At the end of the day, I was given the relevant security camera disc by the caretaker. 4 p.m. Friday, before I left, until 10 a.m. Monday, after lessons began, with a direct view of my office's front door. When I got back to my apartment, it was just starting to get dark. So I opened a can of Fanta, booted up my laptop, and put the camera disc in. The camera showed a normal, quiet night on the Friday and no life on the Saturday, except for members of a youth club simply walking to where they were meeting within college. Nothing freaky happened until I skipped to midnight, between Saturday and Sunday. Suddenly, static filled the camera's vision as if it were an old VHS camera. The static engulfed the screen for around a minute, before it faded out into a rather peculiar image. A man was now staring directly at the camera. He was black, in his late 30s, and was bald. He had a heavy-set face, but I couldn't tell if he was obese or not because I couldn't see his body. It was like a mug shot, but slightly closer up. He had demonic yellow eyes and a fat, downturned nose that looked like a lemon. But the most disturbing thing about him, apart from his icy gaze, was the fact that he had no mouth. It wasn't even like it had been cut off. He literally had no mouth, as if he was born that way. It was scary enough that someone had tampered with the CCTV footage to show this disturbing mute. But what I heard next was the single worst sound I have heard in all my life. Crash. That cacophony of breaking glass made me scream like a demented baby and covered me from head to toe in Fanta. I was more scared than I'd ever been. Slowly, I turned around to see that my window had been smashed by a blunt object, which I immediately found on the floor. It was heavy Kodak camera bag, with 23 foot written on a custom label. Camera 23. I was as relieved as I was scared shitless at this point. I checked inside the bag for any signs of damage. Strangely, the camera was in the exact condition I'd bought it in, but with one anomaly. The college doesn't provide SD cards to the students, nor did the camera come with one. So I shuddered when I opened the battery pack to find that the SD slot had been filled. It was a regular 10-speed SD card. Thinking it could be evidence to catch my assailant, and still scarred by the sound of breaking glass and sticky with orange-flavored fizzy drink, I popped the SD card into the front of my laptop. I opened the DCIM folder to find 3 QuickTime files. Apprehensively, I double-clicked on the first file. The video began with a shot of an apartment building. After about 2 minutes, the camera began slowly zooming in on one of the windows, which I realized looked into a bathroom. A young girl was taking a shower. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old, having barely matured. I stopped watching out of pure disgust when I began to hear animalistic breathing from whoever was filming. My guts churned as I came to the startling realization that camera 23 had been stolen by a voyeuristic pedophile. I was about to alert the authorities when, against my own better judgment, I realized I had a moral obligation to view the other 2 videos. Luckily, the second video was slightly more innocent. Slightly. It was the same girl from before sitting on a sofa, this time fully clothed, specifically wearing a Minnie Mouse t-shirt and a denim skirt. She was talking about her life to the camera, being asked questions by a sleazy-sounding man behind the camera. The disturbing thing was that, while the content of their conversation was perfectly innocent, the video was set out like one of those interview segments at the beginning of online porn films. I thought little of that as the video ended. I opened the third video, and what I saw disturbed and shocked me out of my Fanta-drenched seat. The girl was now tied to a table, naked, with a single burning light glowing above her. She was screaming at the top of her lungs and, most disturbingly, her feet had been cut off with some kind of sharp object. Bloody pools replaced them as she continued to writhe in agony. Then a door opened from the other side of the room and an obese, dark-skinned man walked in. I felt a sharp pain in my neck for a second as I realized it was the man who had stared at me before, with the same piercing yellow eyes and lack of a mouth. Shockingly, he seemed to be wearing severed feet on his ears like antlers. I froze when I put 2 and 2 together. What kind of perverted madman was this? I noticed that he was naked also, and the next thing he did scarred me in a way no other image could. He proceeded to repeatedly and forcefully jam his erect penis into the girl's left ear. I vomited, tore the SD card out of my computer, and drove with all the speed I could muster to the local police department. A few days later, I got a call from the local chief of police. He said that the girl, who I won't name here, had been reported missing a few weeks earlier. I was told that she was murdered later in the video, and that her family were distraught, but thanked me for helping them uncover the mystery of their daughter's disappearance. I attended her funeral on principle and met with her family. This was no happy ending for them, but I was humbled to have helped them achieve a degree of closure. A few mysteries still remain, however. The girl's body was never found, and the authorities were unable to identify the house she was being interviewed in. The mystery that plagues me, though, is that the police still have no record of an obese, mouthless black man with shockingly yellow eyes. I'm worried that this man, I'm not sure if I should call him that, is still out there.
Story 2. Alan's Suicide by One Angry Cowboy.
Hey guys, I've been pretty active in the library for a couple years, and I finally mustered up the courage to share the weirdest thing that happened to me. This occurred in Sarton, Arizona, my hometown. Don't bother looking it up, because as of 2000, it doesn't exist. Sarton was a close-knit town. We had approximately 4,000 people, and everyone knew each other and helped each other out. It was a typical town in small America. I was a pretty studious kid, graduated top of my class. Well, technically graduated. I'll explain later. I wanted to pursue politics as an adult. Yeah, I was an idiot. So I was active in my town's local government and attended every city council meeting. One day, September 1st, 1999, we had another council meeting. Just a normal meeting. I think we were discussing a new shopping plaza opening in a nearby town or something like that. I was 17 at the time and was working as an assistant to the mayor. So a good group of 70 or so people arrive in the town hall and take their seats. The first 15 minutes were normal, small town stuff. In the middle of a discussion, a man rose from his seat. Let's just call him Alan. He was a young man, maybe 5 years older than me. I never knew him personally, but everyone said he was a jolly guy, one of the stoner types. Alan didn't say a word, just pulled a revolver out of his jacket and shot himself in the head. I remember it vividly. The way he instantly fell to the floor, the blood leaking from his eyes and ears, the old lady next to him screaming, brain matter painted across the side of her face. Naturally, the meeting was called off, and the town went into a period of mourning. Schools were closed for a week, and many parents took their kids out of town. I was pretty shocked. That week was a blur. I think all I did was just watching TV and playing PlayStation. Come Monday of next week, when school was going to reopen, nobody seemed to care. It's not like they'd moved on. They acted as if it had never happened. I got the courage to ask some folks around town. I was a shy kid, and they said Alan was still alive. Even better, they said there was never a council meeting that day, as the mayor was sick with the flu. I went to the mayor himself, and he confirmed that he had a bad case of the flu. I asked for the city records. He was a bit surprised, but trusted me and let me look. Sure enough, there was no meeting on September 1st. Later, I visited Alan himself. He invited me in, and we played video games for a while. He was a really cool guy, just enjoying his life, almost like a modern hippie. Regardless, I asked him about his suicide. He thought I was playing a prank and laughed it off. He said he would never think of committing suicide, much less in a public place. He told me he was anti-gun and didn't own a firearm. Thoroughly creeped out, I left the house. I became obsessed with the incident, to the point my parents thought I was mentally ill. Even the weird conspiracy theory kids at school thought I was off my rocker. Christmas time rolled around, and I decided to take a road trip. With my parents' blessing, I drove to Albuquerque to stay with my cousin. We were very close. After getting hammered at a New Year's party, I drunkenly told my cousin about the incident. To my shock, he believed me. He was always an out there kind of guy, always telling me about UFOs he saw and stuff like that. We discussed our thoughts for a while. He, of course, thought it was aliens. I toyed with the idea of a crazy hallucination, and maybe I was indeed crazy. Nonetheless, I left back for Sarton shortly after New Year's. I thought I got lost for a while. If you weren't alive in the 90s, GPS was really primitive and kind of crappy. It said there was no Sarton on the map. Whatever, I thought. GPS was unreliable. I stopped at a gas station in a nearby town and picked up a map of the area. Imagine my surprise when Sarton was fucking gone. I asked the cashier, and he told me there was no Sarton, and where it would be was just a gravel road in a secluded path of desert. I went to that area, and sure enough, it was a shitty gravel road with the only other living things being cacti. I'm ashamed to admit this, but I got out of the car and threw up on the pavement. My hometown, my parents, were all gone. I immediately returned to Albuquerque with my cousin. He lost his shit, but allowed me to live with him. He was a law student, so he was out of the house a lot. One day, I used the house phone to call up my grandparents. They lived in Albuquerque. I asked for a copy of my birth certificate, saying I was just curious. When it arrived, I nearly shat myself. Same birth date, same parents, same everything, except for the fact it said I was born in Albuquerque. I asked my grandparents about my parents, and they told me that my mom died in childbirth and my dad died of cancer when I was 4. For all intents and purposes, I was raised by my grandparents. I don't even remember the next year. I stopped talking about the incident, even to my cousin. In the outside world, I just played along with the new story of my life. I graduated top of my class in 2000 without saying a single word about this to anyone. Me and my cousin had a pact to ignore the incident and just play along. Pretty soon, I think he started believing the story. I'm 26 now and just graduated with a doctorate from UNM. I have a loving girlfriend and managed to break out of my shell and make some real friends. I've never spoken a word about the incident, but it's been bothering me since it happened. The 10-year anniversary is coming up, so I decided to reopen this. If no one in my real life will believe me, then maybe the internet will. If you lived in the Tucson area in the late 90s, do you remember Sarton, Arizona?
Story 3. Back in the USSR. By Unknown.
An aged man was sitting on a bench at the end of one of the platforms in a busy Moscow railway station. He has been coming to this station almost every day for the last 3 years, and sitting down on a bench inside the concourse if the weather was bad and on a platform bench by the tracks during better weather. He was normally dressed in a very old-fashioned suit from some 50 years ago, and always had an old black suitcase with him. After sitting down, he would normally open the suitcase, take an old yellow Communist Party newspaper printed in 1970s or 1980s out, spread it out on the bench next to him, and put little white busts of linen in the corners of the newspaper to prevent the wind from blowing it away. Then he would take a piece of brown bread with ham or sausage and a pickle along with an old Chinese thermos with a hammer and sickle symbol painted on it out of his suitcase and place these objects on the newspaper. After having his quick meal and drinking out of his thermos, he would wrap up the paper and put it together with the thermos back into the suitcase, pull an old book out, and start reading it. The books he read at the station were protocols of the USSR Communist Party congresses and works of the leading communist philosophers of the past, like Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Stalin. Sometimes the man would bring an ancient notepad with Lenin's silhouette on the first page with him, open it, and sit still as if pondering what he should write there. Then, after writing a few words, he would put it away and replace it with an old communist book from his suitcase and get engrossed in reading it. At first, the man was not very noticeable in the hustle and bustle of the big modern-day railway station in the enormous capital of Russia. But soon a security guard working at the station was spooked by the everyday presence of this strange man at a place where one is expected to see new faces every day, as the station visitors normally travel long distances and do not come back to the station too soon after their departures. The guard accosted the man with a question on what he was doing every day at the station. The man answered with a completely straight face that he was waiting for a train to the USSR. Surprised, the guard called somebody on the radio and then told the man, "Hey, don't you know that the USSR does not exist anymore? There have been no trains going there for a very long while." The man objected, "I know, but I am hoping that maybe all of a sudden they launch an additional train to the USSR. Just one train will be enough. And, who knows, maybe I will catch the train in my luck." The guard smirked and called his supervisor on the radio again. The supervisor, in turn, talked to the station master, and they decided not to harass the man. He was polite and clean. He did not look like a homeless vagabond, did not try to spend nights at the station, and did not beg for money. It was not illegal to eat on the benches as the station's fast food places did not have enough capacity to sit all the people who wanted to indulge themselves with some meals before their trips, and waiting for a train was what the concourse and platforms were built for. Little by little, the man waiting for a train to the USSR had gained some popularity. A couple of Russian vloggers posting their videos on YouTube interviewed him. Even a local TV channel once devoted to him a minute of its city life airtime. Street peddlers also tried to sell the strange man some of their stuff. After finding out what he was doing at the station, one of them tried to sell the man sugar, butter, cigarettes, and vodka coupons printed in the USSR to ration these goods. The man blankly rejected the offer, saying that, in the USSR, all these coupons were free of charge to the working class. He did not buy anything from the other peddlers either. And after that, even this limited interest in the USSR weirdo started waning as the man was not coming up with any new tricks and was stubbornly following his original, waiting for a USSR-bound train, routine every day. It was a warm late spring day in the city. The man finished his sandwich and emptied the contents of the thermos into his stomach. That day, he brought with him some vodka blended with tea in the thermos, and the inebriation resulting from drinking this potion made him sleepy. He dozed off and started dreaming about his past in the USSR. He was a happy young man again. He again met his first love, and together, they went to celebrate the International Workers' Unity Day on the Red Square in Moscow. They carried red flags and communist motto posters in front of Brezhnev, Gromyko, Suslov, Kosygin, Ustinov, Chernenko, Andropov, and other leaders of the USSR who were standing on Lenin's mausoleum tribune and watching the passing by jubilant crowds with smiling faces. After that, He was dreaming about himself and his new girlfriend, continuing the celebration in the stairwell of his apartment building by drinking the 777 fortified wine out of the bottleneck and eating very tasty smoked sausages that one could not buy in a store. The sausages were distributed to factory workers by the government as a holiday gift, one per person, and he was able to sneak out of his factory with an extra sausage. A loud whistle and a screeching sound of a stopping train ended the man's slumber. He opened his eyes and saw two soldiers with a giant German shepherd on a leash in front of him. It looked like they just exited the train that woke the man up and wanted to talk to him. The big station had many platforms and tracks. The train was stopped right at the platform where the man took his nap, and it was a sequence of identical old short, wooden-covered boxcars pulled by a black and green locomotive with a steaming chimney and a big red star painted on the front. The uniform that the soldiers with the big dog were wearing and their submachine guns with round magazines on their shoulders looked like they were from a museum with old Soviet artifacts. Very remarkable items of the soldiers' uniform were their blue hats with red hoops around the heads. A red pentagram-shaped badge combined with a hammer and a sickle inside the star was attached to the hoop of the hat directly above a black shiny visor. They must be shooting a historical movie here, thought the man. Intrigued and sobered up, he stared at the soldiers. One of them stepped forward and asked nicely, but with a power in his voice, "Can you tell me, please, if you are a USSR citizen?" The man decided to play his usual waiting for a USSR-bound train game and answered, "Yes, I am." "Then, can you, please, show me your ID?" spelled the soldier firmly. The man fumbled for a bit in his suitcase while still gazing at the soldier and pulled out his very old expired passport issued in the last years of the USSR. The soldier took the passport, examined it for about half a minute, then looked at the man's face as if comparing it to the passport photo and, while still holding the passport, asked the man with the same sternness as before, "Do you happen to have any other documents and belongings with you? Can you give them to me for inspection, please?" Without hesitation, the man handed the soldier his suitcase, the book that he was about to read at the station, and the notepad with Lenin on it. "Yes, with this book, I am educating myself in communism exactly as the great Lenin bequeathed. And in this notepad, I have been making a list of enemies of the Soviet people and the USSR all these 30 years since it fell apart." The soldier took the book and the notepad from the man, put them in the suitcase together with the passport, thermos, Lenin busts, and the newspaper and pronounced even more sternly and still politely at the same time, "Good. Now, comrade." And he spelled the man's name as it was written in his passport. "I have to ask you to, please, follow me to the train." His huge dog, that was sitting on the platform, stood up on all four paws, ready to walk as if he understood exactly what the soldier had just said. The man thought for a second and realized that he had no other choice but to obey. He stood up from the bench and followed the soldier, holding his belongings to the train car closest to them. With his strong hand, the soldier unlocked and slid the heavy square door, located on the side of the boxcar, sideways to the open position. The man was surprised to see that inside the car there were no benches, just the floor with hay on it and a few skinny men sitting in the hay. They were covering their emaciated faces covered with stubble to protect their eyes from the bright light that suddenly for them came through the square doorway into the car. The car had only two windows. They were small horizontally stretched rectangles located close to the roof on both sides of the sliding door. The windows were partially covered with thick metal bars attached to the wall outside of the car, making it impossible for a human to escape from inside. The inside wall of the car across from the door was entirely occupied by a huge poster showing Lenin and Stalin with the motto, "In the USSR, hard labor is a matter of honor, matter of glory, matter of valor and heroism." A strong smell of human excrements emanating from the car hit the man in the nose. Upon seeing this, the man stopped on the platform in front of the open boxcar door and froze in horror. Suddenly, he felt something poke his back. He turned around and saw the partner of the soldier he just talked to at a very close distance behind with a drawn submachine gun. He also saw the German shepherd on the platform baring his teeth and preparing to jump on him. Shaking and stuttering, the man squeezed a question out of himself. "Where are you taking me to?" The soldier, while still pointing his gun at the man, roared, "Get in! We are taking you to your happy dreamland, to the USSR.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to listen to similar stories in future.